How's that? Is it on? Okay. I'm going to start with one of the statements we did in the prayer time. God is my constant source of wisdom. I am divinely guided. God is my constant source of wisdom. I am divinely guided. Together? God is my constant source of wisdom. I am divinely guided. Guided by the wisdom and power of God within you. You are guided so you know what to do. You know how to do. You know what is good and best at all times as you turn to that divine presence, the living Christ in you. Amen. Did anybody read ahead? Huh? We were going to, but life happened. Well, let's see. I'm going to start at the bottom of page 22. That's about where we stopped. We stopped at 16? Oh, okay. The power of myth. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So, page 16. The last paragraph on page 16. Since this book will frequently deal with myth, it is of paramount importance that this disastrous distortion and misunderstanding be met head on, inasmuch as the arguments advanced will lead inexorably to the conclusion that the entire gospel story of Jesus, not to mention about 95% of the rest of the Bible, is a myth or a collection of the same. It is imperative that the true meaning of myth receive detailed attention. And then on the next page, 17, I put a bracket around these three bullet points that he has there. He says, here are three brief quotes from Kuhn to underline the salient point in my argument. Somebody want to read the first one of those bullet points? Illuminati. Fiction. Yeah. We think of myth as it's just a story. It's not real. But it's truer than history. Because as I said during the service this morning, history of an event is a snapshot of a little part of what happened. But a myth gives you the whole thing, complete. And you can do layers of depth within it. The next one. The myth is the only true narrative of the reality of human experience. It is the only ultimately true history ever written, as it is the actual experience of life in its evolution. Real as history is, it is finally less true than the myth. The myth is always and forever true. Actual history is never more than an approximation of the truth of life. And remember the history of war and battles and things? It's done by the people from a perspective of whatever side they were on in the battle, as opposed to what really happened, or they see it through a lens that's different than, say, the other side might have seen it. So they all have a skewed view because they are on a particular side or thought process about what took place. And the third one, myth was the favorite and universal method of teaching in archaic times. It was the finest. And nobody here is a member of, oh please, that organization that Masons? Thank you. And nobody here is a Mason, right? No? I have never been in the Masons, but I had a friend once. We worked together in an office, and he was a Mason. And of course, you know, there's not a lot of information about what they do. And I knew that he worked his way through various stages. And I asked about that and asked what they did. He said, well, mostly we'd watch plays. They had, later, I was playing in the oh shoot, it's on, I can't even say the street. Yeah. Huh? No, it's on Paseo. It's one of the Masonic auditoriums. And we were performing in there. And since I played contrabassoon at the time, I sit through a lot of stuff backstage. So I was walking around the hallways, and I met one of the members, and he took me downstairs to where they have all the costumes for these plays. And they reenact certain scenes. They are reenacting the myths, the stories that contain the information of spiritual stuff. That's how they do it. And I didn't know that, had no idea. And obviously my friend who told me, well, we watch a lot of plays. And he acted like it didn't mean much to him. But if you pay attention and see it with a different eye, then you start to get the teaching that is there. You've read some of Aesop's fables, have you not? And you could find there was a message in each one. And you could ferret that out. You got it. There's a lot of symbolism in movies and stories. And generally we work those out. There's a lot of, some people don't. I just saw I can't remember the name of the movie, but they were doing a commentary about that movie and saying, most people didn't get it. They didn't get this hidden piece, this business of symbolism. You read The Red Badge of Courage? Yeah. And he talks at some point about the army winding like a snake, weaving down the road. And he starts to create this image and kind of an atmosphere. And it's more than if it were just telling you the story. It becomes a visual, which carries more information than just the words on the page. So, having an understanding of the power that is in the myth is an important thing for us. Somebody start the missing what's really going on page 17. Yeah, some people do that most of their lives. Yeah. Ancient science. Yeah. Down at the bottom of the page, right above the last section, uses a couple of words, re-mythologize. Therefore, I got it. Re-mythologize and demythologize. Christianity does not need to demythologize its story. It needs to re-mythologize it, as we shall see. To demythologize is to divest the story of its mythical portion in order to re-mythologize is to reorder it in order to uncover what it was truly in the myth. There's another reason. Does somebody want to read that bottom paragraph? Profanation. Celestius. Yeah, I'll take over for you. The principal determinant of those admitted to the meaning of the myths or initiated into the widely popular mystery religions where they were dramatized, such as I was talking about in the Masonic order, where they dramatize the stories, and you learn the meaning from seeing the story acted out. Where did what's the next? I lost my place here. Mystery of religions. Okay. I see it. The widely popular mystery of religions, where they were dramatized and experienced with genuine zeal for the divine. Commenting on this esoteric approach, the great 2nd century theologian Origen said that ordinary people see only the exterior symbol. I quote, "It's allowed by all who have any knowledge of the scriptures that everything there is conveyed enigmatically, that is, esoterically. Once the early church turned to literalism and an exoteric bottom line rendering of the faith, Origen was considered as a heretic, and his books were banned." Yeah. Origen was condemned as a heretic. His books were banned. To read them was to risk instant excommunication. The church forgot or ignored the fact that St. Paul himself used the esoteric, allegorical approach. Paul does it. And there's a book I want to order about that speaks about the esoteric stuff that Paul has in his writings in the New Testament. I don't know. I have to go back and find it again, because it's just about half a week ago that I ran across this, and I said, "Oh, I need to get that book," and I don't remember what the name of it is. Ancient peoples did not believe their myths. You got that? They did not believe their myths. They believed in them. Can you hear a difference? Yeah. Not to believe the story, but to believe what it contains, what is underneath. For us, this should be easy. We've been dealing with metaphysical Bible interpretation for a long time. You've been hearing me do it, and do it, and do it. Ad nauseum, I think. But Charles Fillmore did metaphysical Bible interpretation every Sunday. And that's getting down into the symbols and finding what they mean to us in our lives right here and right now. It's not about what happened 2,000 years ago or a story about that. It's what it does for us today. Yeah. I lost my place here again. Where is that? They weren't even supposed to tell you what they... Yep. Yeah. I was a member of the Rosicrucians back in the 60s. And I got monographs in the mail monthly. And they were for me to read and to study. But I wasn't supposed to show them to anybody else. I got to keep them, but I was supposed to make arrangement that at my transition that somebody would send them back. So the teachings were not distributed to people who weren't interested in what they were or didn't understand them. Didn't realize that the teaching was spiritual. Well, it was kind of strange, but it's no different than what you do if you're a Mason, because you don't tell people what you're studying. Some of the books, I don't know if they still do that, but some of the books were written in code, and you had to learn to read the code. So if anybody saw what was on the page, they still didn't understand it. You know that phrase, yes, thank you. Read my mind. No, reading what I wish I could. Because there are people who don't understand this stuff or do not cherish it, do not see it as valuable or sacred. Yeah. Yeah. And it's not, and so when you talk about that phrase, it's not about pigs stomping you into the mud. It's about the attitude that you have something precious, but you don't grasp it, you don't understand it or value it, so you treat it like trash and turn it into mud or garbage. Well, I'm sure there have been students who tore up their calculus book, or burned it. But spiritual stuff is something that we sort of, in organizations and in churches and things, they treat it as if it's sacred, because it is. In Catholicism, they have a lot of lot of ritual and certain ways of handling and doing things during services and that stuff. And it's about respect for the truth that's there, or respect for the process. One of the things that a Catholic person would do as they approach the altar is to genuflect down on one knee. Well, the altar represents the presence of God. So you're humbling yourself in the presence of God. It's a piece of honor, respect, and not everybody sees things that way, you know. Through the motions, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah. There were, I can't remember what year it was, but Carolyn and I went to Canada. We went to Toronto, and we went to a Russian Orthodox church. I had shorts on. Yep. Oops. I couldn't get past the vestibule. And the doors were open into the sanctuary, but they told me no because of my shorts. Carolyn couldn't go in. She didn't have anything over her head, and she was wearing slacks. One of the priests I did talk with and I said I wanted to light some candles. And would it be possible to just step in and light a candle? And he let me do that. I got to light, I think, about 3 candles in the sanctuary. And they use all real candles that are not chemical. Yeah, what do we... Beeswax. Beeswax. That probably helps, yeah. But that's just their etiquette in going into a sacred space. One of my visits to what's the city where the miraculous staircase is? You're familiar with that in yeah, it's in New Mexico, Santa Fe. And the place where that staircase is the chapel that was formerly a convent. And it was still an active church when I was there. A friend of mine, Richard Gundry, who was the primary, the top guy for one of these esoteric churches, he had his service in there every Sunday. And he would stand in the doorway as people were coming in. He'd come off of the hallway from the rest of the building. And as they came in, he would remind them that before the service actually starts, that it was to be prayer and meditation, to maintain that atmosphere. In France, I went twice, and I always loved to go to the cathedrals, and certain of them, if not most of them, when you walk in, you can feel the what? The depth, the belief of all the people who have gone in there. I've watched people go up to there's a silver statue in one at Notre Dame that is quite lovely, and people would go up and kiss it. And there's a presence there because of all this veneration. It creates a special atmosphere. And I don't know whether you've ever done this or not, but if you work on developing at a particular time a real good spiritual consciousness in the moment, and then start doing something that's frivolous, you can sort of feel the atmosphere just kind of go down. The energy changes. And so if you disrespect the place, the activity, the truth that's being taught or spoken about in these places, it makes a difference. It's like somebody puts a mar on the furniture, It does make a difference. I would need to finish this page. Talking about these, the myths. Kuhn says, and this is a quote, "Never did intelligent people believe them. They believed what they represented, symbolized, adumbrated." You got that? Now I need you to tell me what that means. It's a report. What is reported, what is outlined. This distinction is tremendously important because, as we shall soon see, it was the total misreading of the myth, of the allegories, and the drama that resulted in Jesus being made into an historical God-man, an event that distorted Christianity from earliest times and effectively aborted the real power of the myth to transform the life of every individual. Once one man became the total embodiment of God made flesh, the rest of humanity were left looking beyond themselves to a matchless paragon of virtue instead of realizing their own Christ power within. Yeah. You worship that out there instead of discovering what's already right here within you. The impetus for moral and spiritual transformation thus was virtually nullified. This eventually led to the colossal blunder perpetuated from the 3rd century onward. That's the period where the church started changing things. In that time, mistaking myth, drama, ritual, allegory, and other forms of symbolic representation for objective history. And following this by turning the body of myths into alleged literal occurrences. In the shadow of the 3rd century, that's one of Kuhn's books, the sacred scriptures are written in a language of myth and symbol, and the Christian religion threw away and lost the very soul of their meaning when it mistranslated this language into alleged history instead of reading it as spiritual allegory. What a difference it made. The result was pathetic. blind faith and a kind of emotional and superstitious supernaturalism. The evidence of this is all around us today in extreme, literalist, ultra-conservative forms of Christianity. Jesus becomes a magician or Superman figure, quite removed from the real universe in which we live. In his book, Miracles, C.S. Lewis struggled manfully to justify the gospel miracles in rational terms, but he ended in a sad failure on philosophical and other grounds. His basic error was in treating as history what never was history, and indeed was pre-treating as history what never, reading that over again, and indeed was prefigured at least 5 millennia earlier in the Egyptian mythology. As Gerald Massey impatiently exclaims in his book, Lunaolatry, that's moon worship, the insanity lies in mistaking myth for human history or divine revelation. The Gospels do not contain the history of an actual man, but the myth of the God-man Jesus, clothed in an historical dress. Sublime myth, literalized, makes for quite grotesque history. We shall see the evidence of this shortly. It's one of the chief reasons why the traditional interpretation of the Bible often makes so little sense to modern men and women, and especially to the young. When I first was introduced to what the Unity people call metaphysical Bible interpretation, all of a sudden, boom, they opened up. Some years ago, Bishop William asked me to do at a triennial meeting, every 3-year meeting of the bishops, the clergy, and the laity. They all come together and do various things. Clergy do business. He asked me to do some kind of presentation to the priests, while the bishops had something else going on in another room. So I went there. I took Sue with me, and Sue spoke the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic for them. They were amazed. They'd never heard that before. And then I did 2 or 3 metaphysical Bible interpretations. And I still have priests. In fact, when I was out there in last fall to do another program, I had priests saying, when you came and did that the first time, you opened our eyes. You opened my eyes. I heard the guy had tears in his eyes telling me how much that opened up the Bible to him. That in his whole career, he'd never seen. The light had never been turned on. And if you read the Bible just as history, or as just as stories, and miss that deep layer of teaching that's in it, didn't make any sense. I've told you, I think, about my first attempt. When I was first new with Unity, my first attempt at metaphysical Bible interpretation. Oh, I thought it was so easy. I bought a metaphysical Bible dictionary. I sat on my bed. I had a sheet of paper. And I started reading a story, and then I started picking the words out and looking in the metaphysical Bible dictionary. And then I started putting down what it said those meant. And I had words on the page, but I had no idea what it meant. None. Because I didn't know how to put it together. Didn't know how to translate it from the words to the underlying meaning. And that's what's so important about all of this. The bottom of page 21, the last paragraph. Somebody want to read that? Just hold it right there. Hold it right there for a second. Do you hear those words? Do you not just hear the words, can you take those words in and realize what a divine thing this is? There is so much more to us than we have ever known. The vitalizing item of ancient knowledge was the prime datum that man is himself in his real being, a spark of divine fire, struck off like the flint flash from the eternal rock of being, and buried in the flesh of body to support its existence with an unquenchable radiant energy. Wow. That's some powerful stuff. And it's for us to become open and receptive to this. Until you get it, you won't get it. Now, by that I mean until you make connection to this, you're not going to feel it. You're not going to know it. But it's so easy. You don't have to become anything. You don't have to do all kinds of Hail Marys and buy plenty of what was it? Yeah. Yeah, paternosters. Yeah. Our fathers. Just as you are, you just have to become open. Out in the hall, Kurt was saying that it's been recent that he made a decision to be open to things, to what the universe may have, rather than trying to make things happen. And it's made all the difference, he said. I mean, it's simple things. You don't get red lights all the time anymore. Traffic seems to get out of your way or be just right when you're going through there that you can get through easy. There are little things like that that change in life. When you stop working from the human self and you start letting the divine self work through you. That's what's so important about this. And sometimes we have been taught that you got to do it. You got to work hard and do it. Some years ago, somebody brought in a sign and wanted to hang it in the church. If it's to be, it's up to me. I was shaking my head. It is for us to let the good of God happen rather than to make the human stuff happen. Yeah. Open up. And you'll see things that you didn't know were possible, so that you didn't know you could choose to have in your life. It's amazing how that light comes in. And Kurt was saying, things changed for him when he started doing that, to become open and receptive. That's what we have to do to make connection with that divinity within ourselves. To allow that divine fire struck off like the flint flash from the eternal rock of being and buried in your flesh to support its existence with an unquenchable radiant energy. Yeah, that's just awesome. On the next page, the first full paragraph, which is about 4 lines down. This is Tom Harper speaking about himself. I had studied some of these insights while reading Greats, which is considered classics, at Oxford years ago, but nobody ever brought it all together in a meaningful synthesis like this. The ancients placed at the myth's center an ideal person who would symbolize humanity itself in its dual nature of human and divine. This ideal person, the names were Tammuz, Adonis, Mithras, Dionysus, Krishna, Christ, and many others, symbolized the divine spark incarnate in every human being, the element destined ultimately to deify mankind. Rooting their religion firmly in the bedrock of nature itself, the ancient sages saw the successive phases of our divinization being enacted daily, monthly, and yearly in the solar allegories of rising and setting, waxing and waning of the moon, which mirrors the sun's movements, and on the larger scale in the precession of solar equinoxes and solstices. Ancient religion was solar and lunar based. It is called sun worship, but it was much more spiritual than this suggests or sounds. The ancient sages of Egypt, Chaldea, and Sumeria were wise and spiritual enough not to wholly identify their deity with even so glorious a manifestation as the sun. God, they understood, was far beyond the sun in glorious reality. But since one can speak of God only by means of metaphor in the end, the solar disk was the most powerful, most fitting symbol that they could conceive of. What's crucial to remember is that when they extolled the sun's splendor, they saw it as symbolic not only of God, but ultimately of our own divinity as well. The sun god was the embodiment or model of what each of us, through spiritual evolution, was finally meant to become. Do you feel any response to that? Anything going on in your body or in your mind about that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The halo. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is just me, but in reading that, I've still got them. Chills. I have chills because it's powerful. And there's some level of me that responds to this. And I hope you do too, because It's not that doesn't feel bad to get the chills. It's kind of good. In fact, they get a little peppery in the nose. Do you know what that feeling? Like you're going to cry? You know. Sneeze, yeah. So we can cry for things that are wonderful and for things that are so beautiful. I used to say to Abby, my thank you, Abyssinian cat, she was so beautiful. I used to say, Abby, you are so beautiful. Sometimes I look at you and just weep or feel like I want to, you know. And that's a good feeling. That is a very good feeling. And we are connected through feeling to this presence as well. There have been various places when I've traveled around, and I love to do churches. I love to see churches. I'd like to go see the new Notre Dame. Yeah, see what it looks like now. In the 2 times I've been there, I've climbed all over that building. I've been up where the gargoyles are, and just all over it. And there are feelings I get in being in places like that, where all that energy has been of adoration, of prayer, of thinking and trying to connect with the power of God. You can feel it. And it also gives me chills. Sometimes makes me want to cry. Yeah.
When I see children doing something wonderful, it makes me cry.
Uh-huh.
They're so pure.
It's funny when I see a program or something and people do something that's really amazing, absolutely outstanding, of making life better for other people or whatever, I start to tear up. I get that feeling and that emotion. And we should be able to have that kind of relationship with the Spirit within us, because it's there. It's not just intellect. Oh no. We are intellect and we are feeling. Thinking nature and feeling nature. And Adam and Eve, thinking and feeling, they have to work together in order to create anything, right? And that is, so many of us are taught not to have our feelings, not to acknowledge our feelings. Some people are so emotionally dead. I remember one time I was listening to somebody speaking, and I was in such a place of nothingness that I felt nothing. I didn't feel alive, and it scared me. And I did everything I knew to do to get out of that state of awareness, because it wasn't pretty. And I don't really know what put me there, except I must have been dwelling on something negative and something somewhat frightening, because I just shut down, totally shut down. And that's not a good thing. I felt like I was dead. Bottom paragraph on page 23, sorry. Somebody take that? Page 23? Yeah, we have seen. Yes. 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 What is of utmost importance, though, is that through the myths and the esoteric or inner symbolism, the reality of the faith of this ancient peoples still shines brightly today. The evidence shows that their belief in God, in the eternal Christ, seed, or principle in every human being, and in the certainty of a radiant life to come, was as strong as, or stronger than that of any literalist or fundamentalist believer today. The Egyptian texts, as we shall see, glow with a life-transforming power and a lofty morality to match. The Ten Commandments, for example, are all anticipated in the teachings from the Hall of Judgment. That's the Egyptian stuff, where the soul was weighed in the balance at life's end. And here is a summary of what the spiritual Christ of both the pre-Christian and the earliest Christian gnosis or experience was, and how such a reality operates in us today. Somebody take number 1. I think that's very clear, is it not? That that's the technical term of what many call the Christ in you is Christos. That's the Latin form. Number 2, somebody take that? That's an important piece. We've all got it, everyone. Even the person down the street that acts like a complete jerk. That beats some of the others that pass through my mind. Yeah. But the reality is that spark of divinity is in there. But so many Christians and non-Christians alike don't recognize it or acknowledge it in their lives. If you haven't awakened to it yet, we're not in that category. But there are those who have not awakened to it yet. And they're in that strictly human, limited physicality and human life. And there's so much more. I'll take number 3. To release the potential power of the Christos within, everyone must realize his or her innate spiritual nature and power. In order to realize it, for it to become, well, he says release it, not realize it. To release it, you have to know it's there. And so many do not look within. So much of this was discovered by people over the centuries, deeply searching within themselves. And what's generally our practice? Go to a book. Call somebody. Find somebody who will tell you how it's supposed to work or whatever. But initially, we have to do it ourselves. You may have heard me say a week ago or so, the only Christ you're going to know is the one that's in you. And it is to us to let that out. Somebody want to read number 4? Yeah, and that's an important distinction. Some religions do lots of rites, have lots of rules and dogma. They're only good if they help you really reach that presence within yourself. Charles Fillmore said, and it's in the covenant that he wrote for Unity Church Universal back in the 1920s, that we'll all believe the same when we all see the truths correctly or clearly. That there won't be all these different denominations, because just as this supposedly in the beginning, there was this one, and it was not called Christianity at the time, but it became Christianity. And as what's his name said, Christianity has always been. It's just not everybody knew about it. Augustine, thank you. I keep forgetting Augustine. I've been to his city, St. Augustine. The Gospels are really dramas about the Christos, with Jesus in the starring role as a dramatic personality. Jesus is the symbolic personification of the Christos. Can you lay hold of that? Does that make sense to you? That was the purpose of the character of Jesus. Yeah. Instead of seeing it that way, they started seeing it as a Superman who could do these incredible miracles and all that stuff. Jesus' birth, death, and resurrection are subjective events of the Christ within that each of us is meant to experience. Don't be scared. We have talked over the years at Easter time or in the process of Lent about the crucifixion and the resurrection. And the crucifixion does not mean necessarily dying, and especially it doesn't mean dying, because can you? No. You can change to another place, another form of consciousness, but you will not die. Because what do we say life is? Exactly. And it's not both ways. So, yeah. Yeah. Remember when you were in, I don't know, junior high school, did you say to other kids, oh, go back where you came from? Yeah, yeah. The Christ is born within the manger of our hearts. The Christ within gives his life for us in the same way that a seed must die in order to germinate. You plant a seed, but does it really die? It changes. But there's still, if it died, there'd be nothing would come up. Yeah. It changes. It grows. It becomes something far greater than it was to start with. Mm-hmm. I've seen things in museums that were seeds that were from ancient Egypt, and they came out of somebody's tomb, and they sprouted. Yeah. It's amazing how tenacious life is. The resurrection is our being raised to new life out of the tomb of our carnality and worldliness. And in the end, as the Creed says, we are reborn to the life of the world to come. I suggest that you read these and begin to really take them in and think about them. Number 7, it is through our permission that the Christos is unleashed to spiritualize our nature. Remember I said, releasing, letting go, becoming open and receptive to its presence. We don't become God, but each of us is a fragment of God with divine potential. So you don't have to become God, you just have to release the God that you are. Number 8, religions should provide opportunity for people to commit their lives not to a personal, historic Jesus, in the case of Christianity, but to the eternal Christ, however this divine presence is described. I think that's very good stuff. And he finishes that with all of these themes will recur as we move along. And next week we'll start with chapter 3. Yeah, it's, I bought this book because I had another book of his. And I read a little bit and I just put it down. And a little bit by little bit, it just started attaching itself to me. And I got to the point where I just kept wanting to read it and read it and read it. And getting, that's Harry, and getting more excited as I haven't been excited in a while like that. Yeah. And that's a good thing. It's the fire was kind of rekindled. Remember that phrase that I was using, rekindling an ancient fire? Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you see the value of it. And this is not a subject that you can just take a book home and read it and you got it. This will be working on you. And I mean it. It's going to work from the inside. That's where it has to come from, because that's where everything is. We really live from the inside out. And I think you'll be very surprised of how this unfolds. And of course, I've been further into the book and read other things, and I have some things planned to jump into the appendix. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. But in the meantime, if it starts to become known to you in your head, you start thinking about it, let yourself think about it. The more you become open to that presence, the easier it's going to be to experience it. And those people in that story I was talking about this morning, they were hungry. They were hungry for that divine presence, for the awareness of that divinity within themselves. 3 days without any food, they were pretty hungry. And they got their food, and they got all they could eat, and there was still plenty. This power is here with us and available to us. But it has to be worked from within. And most of the world doesn't teach us to do that. If anything, they teach us to pay attention to what's going on out here. Go to books, go to people. They don't. Yeah. And that it's like reading a myth and not getting the meat that's in there. Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful. Well, bless you. Thank you for being here. Couldn't do this without you.